So are you energy ready? So if we look at, and this is really important, that it's not just about what Brett talked about in procurement, and it's not just about what we talk about in trying to reduce our energy on the site, and it's not just about how much we build behind, so everyone's gone mad and started building, or at least having their water plan, they're going to build some, and it's not just about the carbon emissions. If you don't have all of those four things in front of mind, you're going to have a very lopsided plan. And it was interesting, when I asked the question of the group, and some really good players from Sydney Water and others around, so if you've got a plan, where's your energy plan? I'd love to see a copy of an energy plan. Now, for those that saw our broadcast, we did a broadcast on energy procurement a couple of weeks ago, and myself, Simon Prunster from Yarra Valley Water, Rod Curtis from Western Water, and Greg Oates from Golden Valley Water, at the end of it, I said, has anyone got a copy of their strategy or plan? And we all went, no, we're just making this stuff up as we go along. And we all agreed that's where we are, because the pledges put us in one space, the price of energy's put us in another, optimising some are doing, even through things like Pi, and behind the meter we're in a rush to we know that what came out of the large-scale renewables is a no-brainer to do behind the meter. It's a cheaper way of procuring energy. But no one has, I can't get off anybody to show me your plan. And the plan is not, so when I asked the question, can I have a look at everyone's plan, I got from a lot of people, I want to have a look at your plan. And what I got was, yeah, we've got a strategy. And I said, great, can I have a look at your strategy? I said, because we've got a strategy, it's an environmental strategy, and it says that we're going to buy some energy, we're going to build some solar, we're going to have a carbon pledge. But it doesn't say how much, how many LGCs I want, how I'm going to buy that power, is it going to be wind, is it going to be solar, am I going to invest in batteries, how much optimisation, how much am I going to spend on optimisation, reducing energy, am I going to throw all my B&R plants out and go back to lagoon systems so I don't have to use that energy. It says nothing about that, it just says that we're on a journey of zero carbon emissions. So when I asked everybody, do they have a plan, everyone goes, yeah, no, we've got a strategy. We don't have a plan. And that's the bit that I sort of want to talk about today in where we can help people put the plan together. And I think it's the answer for the water corporations going forward, to have a standard plan that everybody, everyone's plan's going to look different, but a format that we can all pick up and go, right, plug all this in, now we've got an energy plan that can sit under our strategy, what we would call a tier 2 document. So this is how everyone's left when you start to think of all this. Brett starts talking about it, somebody talks about a PAPA, and everyone just goes, oh, I don't know, it's all too hard. And it at times does seem that way. And, the IWN group is here to help. Obviously, I put this picture up because when I look in the morning, I see myself looking exactly like Thor. I don't know which one's Steve Reddington or Simon Prunster or Greg Oates or the other guys, I don't really care, but I still do look in the mirror and think I do look like Thor. So I'm here to help. So back to this, are you energy ready? And your plan. So how does IWN help you in that, and the energy group, and how do we help you put the plan together? We've done the work. Really, we've done enough work, and I was talking with Anthony Hernan, who's our governance exec yesterday, and finance manager, was around, we've got everything we need now to put together a really good plan, because we've mucked around enough, we've done enough stuff, we've got a really good knowledge of what it is. We just need to get this on paper now, and I want to use this as a template. And Michael Wheelerhan also, who helped us a lot in the PPA process, has also come up with a great governance plan. So a plan that can sit on top of this plan on how boards can then respond to having your plan, knowing your plan, and implementing your plan. So procurement. So what did IWN do and the energy group do in procurement that we've learnt for everybody? Well, a large-scale energy project gave us what is a PPA. Until we did this large-scale project, we didn't have a clue what PPAs were. Everyone's going, what's a PPA? And even now we have a conversation around, so how do you work with the network? Do we get losses? Everyone starts asking those questions. A PPA is purely an instrument to purchase power. And if you think of it in a very simple format, that if you have big lump of solar panels somewhere, and there's one of these being built in Wodonga at the moment. And by the way, North East Water didn't sign up for the large-scale renewable project, not because it's not a good project, and what I'm seeing out of the price and the price coming out of it's an absolute cracker, but because we buy off the wholesale market, it doesn't align with what we're trying to do. We actually want to buy the power, and in the case of this PPA, which is still a ripper, is it is a financial settlement. So basically, you buy power, it sells it into the market, you buy it for this price, it settles on the market, on the wholesale market, and if it's below the wholesale market, you get a nice little return. If it's the other way around, it balances out, and the return over 10 years sees itself doing very well. But the great thing about it, in the same time, you're putting in your back pocket a whole heap of LCGs that you can retire for carbon emissions. So if you're after carbon emissions and LCGs, this is a great product, and you should be on this product. If you're looking for pure power, which is what we're after, it didn't stack up for us, and that's okay. But what it did teach us was, what are the opportunities with PPAs? And what it did teach us was, I've now got sitting in front of me 15 PPAs, and I never went out and asked for them. They're coming like 100 miles per hour because we went out to the large scale project, and probably people in your business are probably getting phone calls saying, would you be interested in a PPA? Sitting in front of me with all sorts of prices and scales of how much for the LCGs, how much for the energy. So it's a buyer's market for us because this is what we learned out of this project is we've got a couple of things up our sleeve. As far as they're concerned, this is people who are building these, we're cashed up. Now we might not think we're cashed up at times, and certainly doing the recent work with the ESC, we feel as though we're not cashed up, but we are in the way they look at it. And we are very financially secure and stable, and we're not going away. So if you want an anchor tenant for one of these large installations for an overseas investor, these water corporations are prime real estate, if you like. So we are people they want because it anchor tenants someone to pay for these investments. So it's a buyer's market. So I think a question before, what if we wanted more? Well, maybe more isn't a financial instrument like the PPA have. Maybe you buy, like we're doing, is a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a bit of wind and a bit of solar and have a nice portfolio of PPAs. And again, if you want to know about PPAs, Simon Prunster, Sean Hanrahan, Steve Reddington, these guys, as Rep touched on before, have been buried in this thing, and they will tell you the best way to buy PPAs. So, if you don't know, remember those names, call me, I'll put you onto them. The other thing we learnt was Vic Water, through the Vic Water IWN Energy Procurement Project, gave us spot pricing, hedging and curtailment. So ourselves, Yarra Valley Water and Goulburn Valley Water went out and placed various plants or equipment on the spot market. So we didn't put our whole energy contract on the whole spot market. I've still got a quarter of my energy is a locked-in contract, pretty much like everybody else's Procurement Australia contract, but 3/4 of my business is exposed to the wholesale market. Yarra Valley Water exposed 3 or 4 plants or large pieces of equipment. Goulburn Valley did the same. Didn't expose all of them, but exposed enough to play on this spot wholesale market. One thing, and again, I'll lead you back. I'm not going to go for an hour and a half because that's like how long it took us to explain it 2 weeks ago. But the broadcast is there. The link is still there. It's a YouTube video. I'm looking for Rowan, but I think, Rowan, it's on our website, the IWN website. Go on there, click on that. It goes for an hour and a half, but it really is informative and it will help you understand the market and how we play. But again, I've now got 4 or 5 people in the industry that really know about spot pricing, really know about hedging, and for the 3 of us, really know about curtailment. So curtailment was during these peak price events. So we had 2 peak price events during January, this one here, where the price, and we're normally paying around $70 for a megawatt, we were paying up to $14,000 in 1 hour. So there's interesting in the response. So I can see a lot of heads going, oh, 14,000, your business must have really hurt. Goulburn Valley didn't curtail. Yarra Valley Water and North East Water did, so we shut down plants. So what you see here is the 3 of us, Goulburn Valley Water, North East Water and Yarra Valley Water, aggregated together, our whole consumption that was exposed to that wholesale market. And these are where we shut down plants. This was the big one where we all shut down. In fact, Yarra Valley shut down to 0 on the plants they had exposed because they swapped over to generators. We just shut a lot of things off for the hour. And what's interesting that doesn't show on this graph, it went into the minus. So we turned everything back on and we're getting power for free. Now, Goulburn Valley Water, who said, well, we're not going to curtail, we'll ride it through and the average will be fine. Their Q1 for that only showed about $2 more they paid over that Q1 period when it's all aggregated and you get your bill, and not $14,000, but just an average out. So even though they were fully exposed, nobody got hurt. It's It's not as big a scary, and that's the worst the market in Victoria has ever seen. So nobody died, nobody got a huge bill, everything was fine. And then you've got others like Rod Curtis from Western Water, who did some amazing work of actually feeding power back into the grid and was part of the curtailment program by AMO, actually made money on the day. So it didn't cost him money, but had money come back in. Now, not a lot, a couple of $1,000s, but he didn't pay power, he actually made money. So those sort of things, and there's the people out there I can put you onto, and the learning is out there. And it's been done because of the IWN group. So if I look at optimisation through the Yakandan Energy Storage Project, we learnt to reduce before you buy. If I give you one piece of advice before you build renewable energy, optimise your plants, reduce your usage at your plants. Otherwise, you're going to overinvest and it costs you a fortune. I see Delia laughing because the both of us sat down when we originally looked at this project. It was $500,000 to save ourselves, I think, $3,000 a quarter. You know, it's like Delia's going, "There's no way this stacks up. This is crap." You know, but we all wanted the renewable energy, but the batteries just didn't stack up. But when we optimised the plant, so that was the energy, and probably most of you have seen this before, but that was the energy consumption at that plant. Really messy, jumping all over the place, and I'm glad Delia's here because she did a great piece of work with Casey on identifying this was an issue at the start. And what we ended up getting was the plant down to that. How do we do that? We just changed out of a lot of equipment. This plant is nearly 20 years old. It was all due for renewable, under renewables, so it wasn't a big cost. We had air actuated valves and a compressor that was near the end of its life, probably would have lasted another 5 years, but we could do it under our renewals program to replace it and upgrade. And then we were able to just remove the compressor altogether, put some variable speed drives in, and bang, we got it out to that. That then went from a project that was $500,000 down to a project that ended up being $145,000. Huge difference if you optimise your plant, but we could have overinvested. And even the size of the plant we've got now, so if I look at review your consumption, so once you build these things and you put them in, just don't walk away from them because there's even more to be gained by actually getting smarter with it. So I've got a fantastic guy in Steve Lam in our SCADA group, and what this actually shows you is, and this is yak, so the yellow is how much is feeding into the plant. This is day by day. The yellow is how much feeds into the plant from the solar. The blue is how much is feeding in from the battery. And the red is how much I'm pulling from the network. And you can see these big chunky bits here where I get ones like these. And what was happening in that was the plant was, we weren't utilising the clear water storage. So this is the learning out of it. If you've got a clear water storage and a water treatment plant, behind the meter renewable energy in solar is insane if you're not doing it, because a couple of things it gives you. One, you get back to running your water treatment plants during the day when your operators are there and they can make adjustments instead of walking out the door at 5 o'clock and everybody wants to use your water and then starts filling up tanks and no one's there, alarms get called, blokes are out all night fixing things. Instead, you run the plants while you're generating energy. And Steve took that idea and then said, well, what I'll do on SCADA is I'll strip it over now that when the solar generation comes in and it says I'm generating enough energy that can run the plant, whether or not the plant wants to run or not, so everybody in the room would have the same, clear water storage, 90%, 75%. So, you know, it goes down, hits 75%, plant starts, fills it back up to 95, you know, it does that cycle. Do it any time of the day, doesn't matter. Usually what happens is it's running down during the day while the operator's standing around with nothing to do because the plant's not running. He goes home, demand goes on, hits the 75 and starts filling up. The plant runs middle of the night and then something trips out. Where here, it's saying, righto, I'm actually only at, so the smarts we put in it, I'm actually at 80%, but I'm generating enough energy now, I'll fill back up to 100%. So by the end of the day, the clear water storage is chock-a-block and it's been filled with free energy, if you like. And so it's another form of battery. Then the only thing the battery uses, and you see that nice little slither there, is it actually only just keeps all the ancillary gear going at night now. So it just keeps the chlorine meters going, some air conditioning, some other things going at night, and it just runs off that battery all night. And we've actually had 3 days in a row where we didn't use any energy from the grid, but now it's starting to get cloudy, and guess what? winter, these things don't work well in winter. Solar does not work well in winter. We should know this on our houses. It works effectively, but it's, it's relying more on the battery. But what we're doing now is we're filling the battery up, and this is the next part we're doing with the RMIT. Can we fill the battery up off the grid at cheap times? So it's exposed to the wholesale market. There are times when it drops. Fill it up when it's only 20 cents or $20 a megawatt, and actually have cheap power that way. So every time it runs off the battery, it's running off cheap power. That's the next part of work we're doing with the RMIT. So optimisation, do it before you buy. Don't walk away once you've built these things. Start running your plants, setting them up to get you, squeeze the juice out of these solar energy projects. So behind the joint meter generation, the other thing through the large-scale renewable project, and if you get a copy of that, the first report that was done to the feasibility study, it's a no-brainer to do behind. What really did was the financial work behind it just said there is no reason why you wouldn't be building some sort of solar on site if you've got the land. If you've got the land, you might be restricted in that, to supply power to your plant. And if it's a water treatment plant, so look at your energy curve. So wastewater, you're pretty much like that all day with your aeration. Water treatments tend to do that. Line that up with your solar generation, it's a no-brainer. And that came out of the large-scale project. The other thing that came out of the YAC project was the batteries are still too dear. So anyone who's buying batteries at the moment, good luck to you, but I just don't know how you'll get your business case. If it wasn't for IWN paying the $45,000 for the batteries to go in for us to trial, there's no way this project would have stacked up. Having said that, what batteries give you is some amazing stuff in generation backup. If you have like a brownout in power, you will never see that. What happens now, if you get a brownout in power, your alarms trip all over the place, operator has to go out. We haven't had to go to that plant since these batteries were put in, simply because either we're running during the day or the batteries cover off on that brownout. Yes?
Is it becoming a viable offset for having a standby generator though?
Yes. So if a generator was going to cost you $100,000 and you're going to spend $150,000 on batteries and said, oh, the business case doesn't stack up, well, it might stack up because you avoid having to have a generator. And these are better than generators. One, no carbon emissions. Two, they are smooth energy, so any spikes in energy. And the other thing they do is they smooth up your power coming in, so your power corrector. So a lot of variable speed drives get damaged over time because of this poor energy coming in. These is a form of power correction. So that's the other part RMIT is doing for us at the moment on behalf of IWN, is what is the business case of these batteries? It's not just about power, it's about a whole heap of things. So that's the battery installation for those who haven't seen it. If they look like little car batteries, they are. They're lithium-ion batteries. The designers of these, these are made in Victoria. That was the other thing that really appealed to us. They were used off mobility carts. That's where they came from. And the great thing about these for the water industry is, and we took Vic Water out there and we took Wannon Water's board out there just recently, and they went, so where is the batteries? And we pointed to a little switchboard, basically the size of this. And you can see the size of it, and said, that's it. And they went, we came out here for this. It's just, it really is nothing. It's just, that's 40 kilowatts of power. So if I wanted to run my house off one at night, say I had a 4 kilowatt on the roof, I just need 4 of these. That would be enough to run my house and off-grid. So pretty powerful, used on a mobility scooter. The great thing that Craig, Heiner and myself are happy about is when we get to retire, we grab one of these out because they're no longer usable, and they're still usable on mobility scooters. So we'll be happy with that. We think we've got a market in mobility scooters coming up from North East Water. And the other thing we learnt was certificates can be used to offset your CapEx costs. So in this case, we could have said, no, we want the certificates, small-scale certificates generated off this, we'll sell them on the market. When we really looked into it, don't touch small-scale certificates. They're a nightmare. They're really hard because what they do, unlike large-scale that are sold onto the market, small-scale are bundled up, and then when they're required, they get sold as a package. Now, they might not be sold for 6 months. They might not be sold for a year. This is why electricians take them off you, because they put them into a pool, they've got a person who hands them. You do not want your own generation certificates off the roof of your house because it's really hard to sell them on the market. Somebody might have told you it's a great thing, it's not. You're better off doing what electricians do to you now, and that is they say, we'll put it on your roof and we'll take $2,000 off because we'll keep the certificates. So that's what's worth over the life of it. in this case, we were able to take around about $25,000 off the price of the build because we let them have the certificates. And in the scheme of things, it was 0.0004 of my carbon emissions if I kept the certificates. Not even worried about it. Just give me the 25,000, I'm happy. Now, I'm really upset Craig's not here, actually. He's had to take off. But we were in Gippsland last week and we had a brag who was the first one to show this picture with the coal fired in the background, and I've beaten him, but he's not here, so Delia, you have to tell him I've used it. So the other thing on the carbon journey is, do you surrender them to help reduce your carbon footprint? And this is the bit we've got to really understand of our Scope 2 emissions we're talking about here, and when we surrender them, is how many LCGs do you really need to offset your carbon emissions? So it's a big piece of work you've got to understand, because you could end up buying a whole heap of LCGs and going, what are we going to do with these things? Because they're really not going to be worth a hell of a lot in about 5 years' time. There'll always be a market for them, because people will always need them, but they're not going to be worth the dollars they are now.
LGCs are large generations.
Yeah, large generation cities, yeah. So I'll just put that graph, I'll lead to that in a minute. So getting back to this, the plan, and finishing off, because I've babbled on enough. From the aeration benchmarking we did with WASA, we learnt that collaboration is a winner to value, but knowledge of the submetering needed to be better. So what we understood around this was, if we got together and got all of the 17 water corps, went in as a group, IWN paid for that because it was great intelligence for our businesses. So the water corps didn't have that blocker to say, look, we want to be a part of this WASA project, but it's $10,000 or it's $5,000. It's free, we just have to give them the data. And they originally did this 4 years ago and got this much of the data set. Obviously it was a bit like that. But then we got the 17 water corps with all our wastewater treatment plants and our aeration benchmarking, and they got that. And WASA was over the moon. They've never had that before. They're lucky to get 10, 15 people in these projects. They got 34 because we had all of the 17 Victorian water corps. The reputation we got out of that was huge to Sydney Water, to Western Australia and others saying, and even other councils, geez, I wish we could really get everybody on board and benchmark. So it really gave us a great reputation. The next stage of that, out of what we learned out of that, was we were terrible at submetering. So understanding within a site and a wastewater plant where our energy is being wasted. And this lines up beautifully with Pi and others on how to grab that data and then utilise it. And so on that, by the way, Yarra Valley Water, Colaban Water and Northeast Water are working with a group called Outperformers. So we've engaged them through the IWN to show us the best way to do submetering inside a plant. So we're doing a water, a wastewater and a pump station. And what we hope to come back to everybody is a template to say, if you want to do submetering, here's the best way to do it. And this is the best way, and this is the best part. This is the best way to use your data. So it'll line up beautifully with this work with Pi, I think. We need other alternatives for generation when the sun isn't shining and the wind doesn't blow, so hydro. So we really need to push further on this hydro work. We need to understand it. It's a battery for us. We've got water pushing around everywhere, but we're not taking advantage of it. There's some little bits and pieces starting to get going, but it's a project we need to get up. So pumped hydro and hydro generation. I'm talking not the big stuff, but in pipes, smallest generation style. And when land is not available, floating solar. So Western Water, Rod Curtis, I know, is looking at it. We're very keen on getting, I've talked to a couple of people at the moment that we look like we can get some serious funding and support to get this up, because we want a bigger scale project. And where land is not available, so we've got a site at Bright, it's basically the wastewater treatment plant and no other land. We couldn't build solar on there to run the site, but we could cover one of the final lagoons and we could generate power off that final lagoon in floating solar. 3 years ago, we didn't want to touch it because there wasn't anything you could buy off the shelf. There's now a Victorian company, there's a Chinese company, there's quite a few of them now importing these things, and they're becoming really viable. We think if we don't do it, we're going to be pushed down this path, because there's a big push on now not to build on agricultural land with solar, and we think they're going to come to us and say, you need to start doing floating. So we need to be ahead of the game with this. And we lack knowledge in the Victorian water industry on how to build a plan. So I haven't got my bag here, but I'll hand it out. WASA have now put together, they want to put together a training package for all of the water industry, but in particular, I think it's a great one, and I've got to talk with Brett and Rowan, of getting the 17 water corps into this. So it's basically a training packages for your business to build this. All of this, so an energy plan. So it teaches us all how to do this. Because one of the things we lack within the industry is knowledge. I mean, a lot of businesses went out and bought knowledge into the business, the Simon Prunsters and the others, to build us that knowledge. We think all we need to do is harness that knowledge. So we've got the smarts in our own business. We've got to teach everybody a new trick, that's all. And we think that this WASA project, which is really around building a accredited energy training that teaches you behind the meter procurement, optimisation and carbon emissions, all in one plan, will be the way to go. So I've got those to hand out for people, and Jennifer wanted me to push that today. I think that's the way to go. The other one which we want to do, given that everyone started building renewable energy, there's a lot of really key learnings in building renewable energy at the moment. People went out, thought it was going to be this price. In actual fact, it's this price. It's changing all the time because everybody's building it at the moment, so the market has changed. Sydney Water came up with a fantastic thing the other day, which I hadn't even thought of, is what they've done is when they went out to the market, they actually went out for an expression of interest. They got everybody in, they said, right, if we put a scope of works out, what in our scope of works makes you jack your price up? What frightens you? And they said, well, you guys want insurances, so it only takes us a week to install these things, and you're treating it as though it's a 12-month build. And that was a wake-up call for us to go, well, because that's how we do procurement when we do large capex. We build water treatment plants. It takes 12 months. We have insurances, we have litigate, we have all these things that we make people pay. But for a solar installer, they're going, I'm in and out in a week. How much insurance do you really need? And so that really simple question, and I think some of that work will feed back in. So what we want to do is we want to run probably around September, August, I'm going to organise a renewables workshop on how to procure renewable energy, and learnings from BlackRock, learnings from generation at Yarra Valley, Western Water and others around how did you procure turbines, how did you procure, and then get an idea of what's the best way, as well as having some of these large people who supply this stuff to ask them the question, what makes your price go up? What are we specifying in our scopes as doubling the price that we don't have to pay for? Because I know we can buy stuff off the shelf a hell of a lot cheaper than what we have to if we want them to build it for. So we think that's a big way to go. So that'll be in August, September. You'll see more about that. I'll send an invitation out. And that's me. So thank you. Any questions?